this out here. All right, thank you all for adjusting the timing today. I actually came from what was Marie Fairing Ribbon Cutting. This was a school in the city that we've been working to rebuild for 10 years. Read the first email that I had about this project was from 10 years ago. It was the first meeting I had with Dr. Santelises, who came 10 years ago. It was about this project, and here we were 10 years later being able to cut the ribbon on it. So it's pretty exciting. So I appreciate your flexibility today and navigating our schedule. Welcome, of course, to Week 8, our weekly Senate press conference. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Chair Gazzone and Senators Washington, Hester, and Zucker to talk about our Senate growth agenda for 2026. As I've mentioned many times before, the Senate remains focused on three core areas: growth, affordability, and protecting Marylanders against a lawless Trump administration. Today, we're turning the economic page as Maryland must pivot away from our reliance on the federal government and federal contracting. We are at a unique economic crossroad, facing an uncertain post-pandemic reality that's been compounded by an economy battered by federal job losses that were wholly voluntary and lost federal contracts that were a result of terrible decisions. Fortunately, we continue to be rich in assets with a highly skilled workforce, a broad-based innovation economy, and research and development activities that the world is envious of. We have incredible business sectors like our aerospace industry with 170,000 aerospace jobs, the quantum technology and research and development that is growing and has enormous potential, and advanced manufacturing that is enabling us to make a pivot in Maryland now when we need to most. Rapid technological advancements in AI are a continual reminder that the workforce is ever-changing and will only change at a faster pace. Unfortunately, we also know that our economic base in Maryland, our growth and personal income and population are lagging behind our neighbors. This crossroads is what provides us a true opportunity that requires us to re-examine our economic path and reimagine a new future for Maryland. In just a moment, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to share some of the key aspects of our growth agenda. But first, I just want to highlight a few items from the Senate this past week. As many of you all saw and reported on, we began the debate and will hopefully finish today on the auto charging reform legislation. I'm very proud of the Senate and our work on this particular piece of legislation and addressing the true racial inequities in our criminal justice system and making progress one step at a time. I anticipate that this bill will pass out of the Senate today. So far, we've passed about 60 bills. We will have another 10 on the agenda that we foresee moving forward. Our committees have been in full swing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of witnesses that have come down to testify. And we've had a number of nuanced and varied issues from healthcare to insurance to improve the lives of Maryland families and businesses. Among a number of those bills that you will hear about shortly, the growth agenda has been a core part of our work. We're trying to focus on improving main streets, reimagining our economy, and we're trying to break it up into three areas: growing for the future, supporting our workers and small businesses, and streamlining regulations and permitting to help businesses grow. As businesses innovate, we too must do the same thing in government. That's why we've made growth a top priority despite the challenges that we know in our economy. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Chair Gazzone for his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everybody. So as the President mentioned, we are the envy of the world in many ways, in particular our research institutions. What I want to talk about to begin with is a bill that was introduced yesterday, or heard yesterday, the Maryland Growth Initiative. To talk about that, though, I need to step back for just a second and talk about something that happened in 2012. This is not a new issue in the sense that we know that our institutions, our higher ed institutions, are producing information and technology and ideas that can be commercialized, and that's what we want to do. We want to help that commercialization process. In 2012, we did the Maryland Innovation Initiative, and back then we put some money aside. We brought in TEDCO, and we worked together to get individuals who were doing great research and great ideas to take their products through a commercialization process. And there's a lot of training and support that was given by TEDCO to these organizations. We've done very well. we have risen in the ranks of commercialization across the country. Back then, we were ranked at 38th, and now we're ranked above 8th in the country of being able to turn those ideas into real businesses. Now, having a business is complicated. There are stages of the business, and that's where this Maryland Growth Initiative comes in. The Maryland Growth Initiative will take it to the next step. There's a saying called the Valley of Death, that you get going, and then all of a sudden you need more money. You need more support. And that's where we're focusing with this bill. We're going to be devoting some more money, $5 million to this project. We're going to put an additional $5 million to the project that we had before. And those two things, we believe, will do a really good job of continuing to move us forward. And the key, obviously, on this for us as a state is not only do we want them to succeed with their business, we want them to stay here. And that's what we're hoping to accomplish with this. So that's one bill we have. I want to talk real quickly about two other things where we're going to be streamlining regulation through using the budget process. We have a permit review process requiring the state and local jurisdictions to review all permits that impact business community to ensure permits are issued timely and with certainty. And that'll be language that'll be in the budget to really require some additional work on our part and on local governments. And the other thing is to create a one-stop shop for business creation. There are 3 entities right now. If you're going to create a business, you got to go to ESTAT, you got to go to the comptroller, and you got to go to labor. They all have separate websites. We want that to work together so that businesses can easily form their businesses and continue to do the business that they do online. And with that, Mr. President.
It is Senator Alonzo Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. I'm a Senator Alonzo Washington, representing District 22 in Prince George's County. Maryland is under a critical economic development. We, the Senate, will work towards building Maryland's economy brick by brick. Maryland's economy has been heavily impacted by the current Trump administration, specifically in Prince George's County, who's had the heaviest hit by the Trump administration and its jobs and contractors. As the demand for Maryland to expand its economy is increasing, I'm sponsoring Senate Bill 869, Maryland Workforce Launch Pilot Program, as a way to contribute to the state's economic growth. This bill creates a new pilot program that provides customized workforce training services to attract new strategic businesses and firms to come to the state of Maryland at zero cost. The program gives the Department of Commerce the authority to create partnerships with no more than 2 community colleges and target industries that align with the state's competitive advantages, like aerospace and engineering and technology. Under the program, the department can distribute funds to the partner community college to cover the direct costs of developing and delivering customized training for qualified businesses, entities, establish performance metrics to keep track of economic progress and revenue growth, increase in-job opportunities, and the salaries that the qualified business entities are providing for individuals who receive the training. The goal of this bill is simple: to entice strategic firms and businesses to come to Maryland and contribute to the economic growth. By doing this, it will expand economic opportunities such as jobs and have a robust economy. I am proud to sponsor this bill, and it aims to provide Maryland's economic future. I'll just note that the Maryland Association of Community Colleges support this bill, and they noted that our nearby Virginia has a similar program. It's called the Virginia Talent Accelerator. They use this tool to lure in Legos group to invest in over $1 billion in investment. That was 1,700 jobs at that facility. Is a flagship, was one of their flagship success for this Virginia Talent Accelerator. So I'm really excited to be a competitor to Virginia, to make sure that we stand up a program like this to make sure that businesses stay here and we attract folks that attract businesses to be here here in the state of Maryland. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Senator Katie Fry Hester.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Senator Ferguson. I'm glad to be here today. As many of you probably know, I chair the Joint Committee on Cyber, IT, and Biotech, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about IT and a lot of time thinking about AI. And you know, on the upside, there is so much opportunity in this state around artificial intelligence. Today, you know, Maryland's economy, nearly $38 billion is related to high tech, and in the past few years, AI-related jobs have grown 40%. Some people worry that they might lose their jobs, but really what we need to do is to make sure everybody is AI literate, because if you know how to use AI, you'll be more likely to get a job. And that's what Senate Bill 597 is about. This bill establishes the Maryland Artificial Intelligence Partnership within the University System of Maryland. And the goal of this partnership is to create a single nexus in the state, that one place that brings together our universities, our state agencies, our businesses, and our workforce partners to accelerate AI innovation and growth. We are uniquely positioned to lead in this moment. We have one of the strongest university systems in the country, and they're doing extraordinary work on the very topic of artificial intelligence. And the challenge here in Maryland is not a lack of innovation, it's that so much work is actually happening, but it's slightly in silos. And what SB 597 does is it helps to connect those efforts and translate them into real economic opportunity. The bill focuses on three main things. First of all, it strengthens our talent pipeline. It expands two key scholarships that we have, the Cyber Warrior Diversity Program and the Cybersecurity Public Service Scholarships. So it broadens both of those programs to include not only cybersecurity, but also artificial intelligence, so our students can get jobs in that critical area. Second, the bill establishes an AI incubation lab within the University System of Maryland to assist our state agencies in accelerating the responsible use of artificial intelligence, while giving the students at the university the opportunity to work alongside our state agencies and get hands-on experience. The third thing the bill does, it establishes technology extension hubs, and this is modeled after the agricultural extension program, where throughout the state we can have regional points of contact where small businesses, entrepreneurs, and community organizations can access artificial intelligence resources, technical assistance, and no-cost training, ensuring that the benefits of the artificial intelligence reach Maryland's workforce, small business community, and not just the large tech companies in our state. When I was doing the research on this bill, I noticed that New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts have established centralized AI partnerships with their higher education industry, and they're already attracting billions of dollars. Maryland has the same, if not better, extraordinary assets here with our world-class universities, our federal research institutions, and SB 597 helps to bring those strengths together so we can in turn reach into our innovation, turn innovation into jobs, and turn jobs into long-term economic growth. With this partnership, Maryland will lead in the industries of the future, and our students, our businesses, and public institutions will be prepared to succeed in an AI-driven economy. Thank you, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of our Budget Capital Committee, Senator Craig Zucker. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Hester. Good morning. Morning. So what you've heard today is we plan on growing the economy and have a plan that goes forward that both creates and maintains jobs. What we've known, and you heard the Senate President say this earlier, that Maryland is asset rich. Well, today, with the slew of bills that have been introduced, we're not only asset rich, but we're strategy strong. And yesterday was introduced Senate Bill 905 that utilizes the capital budget around the Maryland Development Corporation. And what we're gonna do with that is we're gonna invest capital dollars for startups around computer science, biotechnology, aerospace, and regenerative medicine. And this is the most important part of this, because when we're investing in these sciences and these industries at the startup phase, we're then able to take them from the startup phase to manufacturing. And for me, this hits home because my father was in the manufacturing. And I understand the benefits and the impact that those industries have on families. So it also keeps us not only competitive across the country, it keeps us #1 in the United States, and will soon brand Maryland as a global leader across the world. The other thing that we know, once this bill takes effect, is that for every job that's created, 5 more are created from that. In addition, every dollar that we put in capital on this is creates another $3 worth of economic activity. So this is a great way to grow the economy, support our manufacturing industries. It ties all the work we've done on the capital budget around quantum computing and now tying it to these startups. So we are really leading the country in these industries. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the Senate President. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Just sort of in quick summary, what you've heard is a focus on the innovation economy where Maryland has a competitive advantage. Questions on the package first? Yes, please.
Chairman Guzzotti was mentioning how several years ago, we sort of started on a path like this, but there's definitely seeming to be a much greater, broader focus on this now. Is it because of the administration in Washington that has brought this attention, especially to bear on this at this time?
Sure, absolutely. Of course, we've always had this understanding of our relationship with Washington, and we were very grateful of that competitive advantage. But we never, I don't think, ever lost sight of the idea that we had to develop other opportunities along the way. And so we have done that in many ways over the course of time. Matter of fact, I just, in our committee, was able to re-up a couple tax credit bills, one on bio tax that has been around for years, one on cybersecurity. We've been thinking along these lines, but the position that we're in, that the administration has put us in Washington, is that we have to be even more forward in what we think of.
On the package in general, how are you balancing ensuring that you're not going to over-regulate new industries that you want to take off? Are you working alongside industry leaders when you're designing some of these laws?
Yeah, I mean, I would say ideally we're doing the opposite. We're making it easier to thrive and grow. The chairman talked about what we're going to be doing in the budget. You know, what we hear from too many business leaders is that the permitting process and the requirements at the state and local level can often be burdensome or time consuming. And so this initiative is really built on trying to add more transparency into the system and most importantly, add some shot clocks and timelines so that if you are developing, if you're trying to grow, if you're trying to expand, that you have an idea of just how long it will take before you will know. The biggest challenge that we hear from business leaders is uncertainty. They'll deal with higher costs, they'll deal with regulatory burdens that make sense and are for health and safety, but there's got to be certainty about what happens moving forward. And so the budget initiatives are really focused on that, and we're taking the insights that we hear from business leaders regularly in developing this package.
And about how much is going to be in the budget for these types of proposals?
We're still working through the details. You know, several $1 million, tens of millions probably in the large scope of things. If you look at the capital budget, I mean, we spend over $1 billion in our capital budget, but a substantial portion will go towards economic development. The Medco bill will include, do you remember how much of the? 5 million specifically, 5.8 million specifically for investments in highly competitive businesses. So, you know, it is. Money matters, but it is not the only thing. Policy matters too, and I think when we think about the permitting review, that doesn't cost $1, but it does cost $1 for business owners who spend time and money just trying to get through a process, and so we want to eliminate those burdens.
I feel like it's also the same thing with data centers, where you're kind of balancing, like there are plenty of bills that also try to regulate their power use and bring clean power and sort of the issues with that, but then there's also bills like, we also have to kind of catch this wave.
Yeah, look, everything is interconnected, and I think that's not a pun when it comes to energy. But that was an energy joke. That would really it felt pretty flat. Yeah, right. Yeah, stand up is not my thing. No, in all seriousness, we know that Maryland's energy costs are a detractor from business development. We know that the cost to expand advanced manufacturing, it's why there is actually enormous promise around quantum. The energy use around quantum is significantly less than most other processing. So we know that as we're looking, we deeply, deeply care about our residential families in homes and apartments who are dealing with high utility bills. It's also an economic development issue. And so dealing with the challenges we have with energy bills is also a commercial hampers economic growth commercially as well. And so it's why it's also a priority, even though it's not necessarily a part of this package, it is interconnected and we are focused intimately on it. I don't know if you want to add any data center.
I would just say that I was really happy that so many of those big tech companies signed, an agreement with the White House on the 4th that said they're willing to pay for their own their own energy. At the same time, back in the PJM process, they're, saying, hey, well, when do we have to start paying? Is it now? Is it next year? Is it 5 years from now? So I think, I've been part of this group that's worked really closely, like senators from all the PJM states. We're putting pressure on PJM because we need them to level the playing field so that the prices, are shifted back to where the load is occurring, and we make those data centers pay. Right now, the Maryland's Office of People's Counsel has said that probably currently embedded in our bills, $10 to $20 of that is related to the data center capacity costs.
Speaking of energy, what is the purpose behind the EEE committee hearing today on utilities? What answers are you looking for?
Look, I think we have gotten more and more knowledge about this supplemental approval process, a process that allows regulated utilities to some degree bypass, but it is a lawful process that exists to go through a federal approval for underground transmission lines that does not incorporate any planning from the state. And so today's hearing is really about trying to get a better handle on that process to understand in what ways can the state act to ensure that there is better compliance with state objectives, and most importantly, how do we ensure that we are getting the best possible deal for ratepayers? When there is an outside federal approval, these projects are not competitively bid. They're done by the utility independently, and the rate of equity return that is expended and returned to the utility is higher than it would be if it goes through the traditional CPCN process. And so we really want to see if there's some guardrails that we can put in place to make sure that as these projects move forward, and there may be some that are necessary. In fact, I am certain there are some that are necessary. Just because they're necessary doesn't mean they should blow the budget. And so that's where we have to find ways to rein in those costs as much as possible.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of budget and
Other chamber, but that's okay.
yeah, Mr. President, look,
All good, all good.
been a busy day. So, Mr. President, look, last year our team broke a news story that Maryland taxpayers are going to face potentially billions of dollars in tax payments, or legal payments rather, under the Child Victims Act. We're still trying to understand where that money's coming from. Do you know?
Look, this was an important public policy that we moved forward last year that has been a product of many years of debate. We have, unfortunately, some horrific stories over time of children who were abused while in state custody and state care. It's unacceptable, and they deserve compensation. We also need a process to make sure that that compensation is equitable and appropriate and achievable. And so the Attorney General has been negotiating with the attorneys for the victims to establish a process for that reimbursement. Obviously, those are confidential negotiations, as any settlement negotiation would be. I am confident that the Attorney General knows the constraints of the state budget. Having served in the legislature, in the House of Delegates, and in Congress, he is aware of the constraints that exist and understands that we do have a duty to compensate those who have been victimized. We just have to do it thoughtfully and appropriately. And so we're monitoring it to the degree that we are getting updates. We know that those conversations and negotiations are ongoing. I think any estimates of the impact, it's too early to say until a framework has been created.
Is that victims say, if I may follow, please. Sure. Victims say that this is just intentionally being pushed down the line. What do you say to those people?
Look, first and foremost to the victims, I would say it is horrific what they've had to experience. And so we passed this bill because we recognize the pain and suffering that many of them have had to live with for decades. And so, that is the most important value here, is that they deserve their time in court to confront the pains and ills that they've experienced. And I would say, I think we all recognize that pain and want to be judicious and thoughtful in a way that we know that any commitments that we make, we can follow through with. And that means that we have to have the resources available to provide the compensation for that pain and suffering. And so I don't think anybody is slowing anything down. I think it's taking a thoughtful approach for a very complex and challenging issue.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask about an exchange of bill hearing yesterday in Senate Finance involving the First Lady and Senator Kramer. And I wanted to get a sense from you about how you feel those comments fall within the sexual harassment guidelines that the legislature passed in 2018. And also, as a mandatory reporter, what's your role here?
So thank you for the question. I have not had a chance to see the full exchange.
You are aware of the exchange.
I heard I heard about the exchange last evening. I haven't had a chance to review. Certainly I want to have a conversation. And I want to see the footage first and make sure that I speak from a position of knowledge of the actual, what I see having had happened. What I do know is to speak to this larger value is that no one should feel uncomfortable at work. That's for those who appear before our committees, who come to visit the Senate floor, to the gallery. This is a place of business. It's a place of professionalism. And since I have had the opportunity and privilege to be the presiding officer for the Senate, we have made a number of substantial changes to our sexual harassment and our victim protection standards for the way that the Senate and the General Assembly operated. I'm proud of those changes because at the end of the day, it is not appropriate and it's unacceptable if somebody feels uncomfortable coming to work.
Mr. President, we saw Kristi Noem was fired yesterday. I know she's a couple steps up the chain, but I welcome any general comments on that. But more so, I'm curious, do you think states like Maryland passing legislation to show that they are not welcoming these current ICE enforcement tactics, do you think that that signaled to the administration in any way that states are really not willing to put up with this and that that could signal a need for change and could have spurred this removal?
I have no idea how to contemplate the rumblings and ramblings of this federal administration. So I have no idea whether or not our actions had any impact on that decision. What I can say is the way that the Department of Homeland Security has been operating over the last year and a half has been unconstitutional, unlawful, and absolutely abhorrent. And so I think it was right to remove the secretary. What we've seen is that under her prior leadership, American citizens were being gunned down in the street for what was purported to be immigration enforcement. We've created fear and hostility in neighborhoods and communities across this country, and particularly here in the state of Maryland. And you're seeing a reaction across the country, in red and blue places, I will add, of this is just not the America that can continue in this fashion. And so I have no idea why the decision was made. On what I am glad that that the secretary has been removed, but frankly, I'm withholding judgment because it's hard to know who and what the replacement will be and whether it could be worse. We have to prepare in Maryland for what we have control over, and that's why you're seeing us move forward a number of bills to protect Marylanders from what has been a consistently unpredictable and in many cases unlawful federal administration when it comes to immigration enforcement.
Mr. President, you've spoken about the effort to coalesce in House and Senate around a kind of an energy package that kind of both chambers can get behind. How is that effort progressing? What are we thinking on timeline? And are there any sticking points in that discussion?
It's going very well, and we've been working very closely and productively with our House counterparts on the budget and as well on this energy package. Here's the issue. It's complex and it's challenging. And I would say it's not about disagreement. It's about trying to maximize our impact and trying to really make sure that we are lifting up every stone to find policies that will reduce costs for ratepayers and for everyday Marylanders on their electric bills. And so we are meeting again today. We've been meeting on a regular basis, evaluating all of the different bills. We have a number of incredibly talented legislators who've brought some great ideas to bear. I'm hoping in the next week or two, we'll be able to release a joint package that will help to really provide some relief in the short, medium, and longer term for Marylanders.
On local transmission, PG&E announced this week a pause on its project, but it sounds like it's temporary on the project in Baltimore City. How encouraged are you by that? Do you think that they could just kind of turn around and keep going with it?
I'm very pleased and I appreciate that they are pausing. And I think this goes to this earlier point that we know that there are electric upgrades that are necessary. From transmission to distribution, we know that there is a greater demand and a greater draw of electricity and energy overall in Maryland across the state. That means there have to be upgrades. The key here is that as a regulated monopoly, we have to have the right policies and transparency in place to know that the upgrades that are happening are giving the best value and the most efficient projects possible so that we're not seeing costs run out of control. And I think that's why this pause is so important, is it gives the opportunity for us to engage and provide additional transparency and regulatory impact so that we can make sure that we're getting the best dollar value for each dollar that's spent by a utility.
Mr. President, we can do one or two more. I know you have one.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about SAT scores. We've seen that according to new Maryland state data, the SAT scores in Baltimore City are at a record low, at least as far as we have records back starting in 2017. So in 2017, average SAT score was 910, and now it's 856, which is the lowest in the state.
Given that we've put so much more funding into education, do you find this drop in SAT scores acceptable? And who do you think that taxpayers should hold accountable?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that one test is not a definition of an entire system. Obviously, we would like to see scores growing everywhere, but one test is not a determinative value. I think we've seen a lot of debate over the SAT in particular and its inequitable impact, and over time, it's why we've seen the score go from 1,600 to 2,400 back to 1,600. So it has been a changing test, largely because there are some real concerns about its value add as an indicator of long-term academic outcomes. In fact, what we've seen is that lower SAT scores, but with individuals with higher GPAs who go on to college, show better persistence and long-term outcomes than what just on the basis of their SAT scores. And so that's an important feature here. Now, that all said, of course we want to see all kids be doing better. And in Baltimore City, we have seen progress. We're not teaching to the SAT test. What I also have seen is higher graduation rates. We've had a higher matriculation into college, a higher 6-year graduation rate from college and from community colleges over the last 6 years. I think we've seen the pandemic have an unprecedented impact on educational outcomes across the board. And so we're still trying to figure out avenues to make sure that we can recover from those 2 years. But look, of course we want to see additional progress. I don't think a single SAT score is the measure of whether or not a school is succeeding or failing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you all very much. See you all soon.